Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte, and we are live in Stockbridge at the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Because where is there more winter holiday aesthetics than the Berkshires?
You're thinking of answers right now. Stop. It's idyllic here.
And we've got wicked cool holiday times in store for you today. We'll speak with the director of the Triplex Cinemas in Great Barrington about their Bring Back the Movies Holiday Edition event at Simon's Rock this Saturday, as well as two of the actors who will be reading. And oh hey, as added bonus, they're Berkshire's residents too, Jane Atkinson and Michael Gill.
And we'll have a little live music from Pittsfield singer-songwriter Billy Keane, who not only is a member of Whiskey Treaty Roadshow, and has a great solo catalog, including his latest album, Oh These Days, released earlier this fall.
And we'd be remiss to be in this museum without talking about the work of the man for whom it's named. And here to talk to us about not just Rockwell's work, but some of the exhibits happening now and what you can look forward to in the museum is Chief Curator and Deputy Director Stephanie Plunkett.
Stephanie is the author of 2 American Library Association notable children's books and the curator of many exhibitions exploring the field of illustration, including The Unknown Hopper, Edward Hopper as illustrator, William Steig, Love and Laughter, Ephemeral Beauty, Al Parker, and the American Woman's Magazine, and many, many more.
She began her professional career in the field of museum education and has previously held positions at the Brooklyn Museum, the Brooklyn Children's Museum, and the Heckscher Museum of Art in Huntington, New York, not Huntington Museum.
Okay.
And is now here as Chief Curator at the Norman Rockwell Museum. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're glad to be here too, and this is our last live broadcast of our first year of doing a show here. So
and our 200th show.
Yes, so it's a kind of a fun and momentous occasion. And Norman Rockwell Museum is a place I was lucky enough to visit about 10 years ago with my kids. And Norman Rockwell is almost a name that needs no introduction. But let's for a moment pretend that people don't know about the history and legacy of Norman Rockwell. Stockbridge was not his first home.
You are right about that. He did live in Stockbridge for his last 25 years, which is why the museum is here. But he was actually born in New York City in 1894 and started to move north gradually. So living in Mamaroneck, New York, New Rochelle, New York, Arlington, Vermont, and then finally Stockbridge.
And he did not live here on the campus of the museum. He lived about a mile away in downtown Stockbridge.
That's exactly right. He lived across the street from the historic Red Lion Inn, where he frequently had some dinner. And he established a really wonderful studio behind his home, which is now on the museum grounds and is open for visitation.
But not in the winter because there isn't as much.
Yeah, we tried to go visit it.
Yeah,
but
we did.
We couldn't go in.
I'm sorry about that.
Come back.
Please
come back
please
when
come
it's
back in
warmer
the
out.
spring.
Yes.
Absolutely.
His work is, I think, most well known as the covers of the Post, but there's so much more to that story of him joining the staff of the Post or being contracted by the Post. And we start with the beginning of his illustrations, at least in that period of time for him.
Yeah, so the Post, he called the Saturday Evening Post the greatest show window in America for an illustrator. And that is because, of course, we don't think about it now, but the way that people enjoyed entertainment and received information was through print media in Rockwell's time. And so the Post, even in Rockwell's earliest years, had a weekly subscription rate of about 3 million.
Wow.
Going eventually up to almost 6 million later in his career. So when you think about the fact that, as the Post said, every issue was probably seen by at least 10 people. So if you went to your local, doctor's office or grocery store, or it was just everywhere. And so the artists who were featured, especially on the covers, became celebrities. And they endorsed products, and they were really trusted commentators. So, Rockwell really became a household name in his time. And he was working for more than 6 decades. So he had, the way that we think about him is he was probably the most influential illustrator of the 20th century.
That's really interesting, considering how I think in modern time, like illustration is really not respected as much as other visual art mediums. To say that they were celebrities is kind of like, it's really interesting. Like, here is this medium that is definitely very, like, it explains a lot about the current situation of the world, especially in that format, but isn't really looked at in that same way now. Like, what happens in that period of time to sort of knock it down a few pegs?
That's a great question. During Rockwell's time, people loved illustration because they were narrative pictures that told stories. And in a way, people felt that Rockwell showed them the best in themselves. But there was some controversy in the mid-20th century because, of course, abstract expressionism was the art of the nation, and illustration was viewed as a lesser art form. But what's interesting now, I think, is that visual storytelling is very prominent across all media. And so artists have become, in a way, more integral to society, which is a very nice thing. Though I think the ability to achieve the fame that Rockwell did as an illustrator is a little bit harder because things are more, I'd say, spread out. But when you think about the number of artists who are included in, digital media, animation, when you look at pretty much any Facebook site or internet site, you're really seeing the work of illustrators.
Well, it's interesting because now we go to Google and you look at the Google Doodle and you say, this artist has done the Google Doodle for the day. Or maybe at least in print media, we still have the New Yorker. There's a friend of mine from Ashfield who's done 4 or 5 New Yorker covers. So there is this still pining to be both in print and in the digital world.
And an artist that I used to work with in my former life who's done like many there, Kate Beaton.
Uh-huh. So it's something that still exists, but that Rockwell, is the most famous for. He did over 300 of these Saturday Evening Post covers, and you can go see them all in the basement of the Norman Rockwell Museum, where Pee-wee's bike is. Oh no, that's the Alamo. But it's the time period which he spans is remarkable because he starts in the mid-teens of the 20th century and goes all the way up through the assassination of JFK, and you can chart that course through his work.
That's exactly right. The way that we think about illustration is that it actually both reflected and shaped the world around them. And so Rockwell's work through the decades was really a reflection on society at the time. It also reflected the attitudes, the cultural attitudes that were considered the norm. And so, publishers and advertisers and illustrators were kind of a part of a compendium that presented a particular view on American life. And so, I think they were all very influential because of the number of people that they reached.
I think that in a small part also leads to him leaving the Post too, because of the ideology at the Post that he wasn't able to reflect in his work, or didn't want to reflect in his work. You have more about this.
Well, I mean, you could look at the early works of Norman Rockwell and see this idealized idea of what America and Americans can be if you're white. But the reason that there are so few people of color in the Saturday Evening Post covers is because of the editorial board of the Saturday Evening Post. Can you talk more about that? And then his transition into doing stuff that may have reflected more of his vision.
Absolutely. The Post was a very conservative magazine, and they were also a magazine, like all magazines, that were supported by advertising. Mm. And, when they considered their editorial positions, that had a lot to do with what they reflected in the magazine. So Rockwell very much, on many occasions, tried to push against that thinking, the idea that if a person of color was reflected on the cover, it would be in a service role, as opposed to, maybe a doctor, a lawyer, or other. But his ability to, I think, push against that was limited. In the 1960s, he actually presented at the time a cover that was somewhat groundbreaking, and we don't think of it that way now. But in 1961, there was a cover called The Golden Rule published, which portrayed people from various races and ethnicities from around the world in one cover with the tenet, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And it took several months, actually, for the Post to finally publish that cover, which frustrated Rockwell a bit. But the concept of people of all races standing next to each other as equals, and even in early 1960, was not that common in illustration. So, from there, Rockwell, I think, really finally understood that, as a spokesperson who had so much reach and who was so trusted, he almost had a responsibility to make statements that were meaningful culturally and within society. So in 1963, he made the decision to leave the Post, and he began to work for Look magazine, which was really focused on contemporary issues. And his very first illustration for Look, which was published in January 1964, was commentary on the 10th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, which stated that separate is not equal in America's public schools. So from there, I think he began to understand that, as almost an elder statesman at that point, he could have an impact with his work. And in fact, we have this amazing archive of letters from just regular people who were commenting on the importance of what Rockwell was doing at the time.
That's Stephanie Plunkett, who is the chief curator and deputy director of the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, where we are right now. One thing that's interesting about his transition to Stockbridge has to do with his own mental health. Now, I'll say shameless plug. Become a member of NEPM and you get the Passport app and you can get all these PBS documentaries. And the PBS American Masters about Norman Rockwell is fascinating and talks a lot about why he, for his own mental health and for his wife's mental health at the time, sought solace here in Stockbridge.
That's true. So Rockwell, was a very busy working illustrator. He pretty much worked every day for extended days. And his wife, Mary, the mother of their 3 sons, was struggling with depression and alcoholism, and she was being treated at the Austin Riggs Center here in Stockbridge. And what I think they finally realized was that a move was going to be necessary because Arlington, Vermont, where they were living, was more than an hour away. And so they moved to Stockbridge, which became a community that they really loved. I mean, I think they were embraced almost immediately by people in town. It became a place where Rockwell, in a way, found another fresh beginning, because he found a whole new retinue of models and friends and things that really stimulated his thinking about his work. Because, of course, he was a great observer of human nature, and I think he also appreciated the shift that provided. But he himself was actually being treated by the famous psychotherapist Erik Erikson. And he and Erikson developed a kind of a therapeutic friendship in which they discussed the world situation. And the concept of the golden rule actually was something that the both of them were quite interested in and discussed on a regular basis. So Erikson actually wrote about the golden rule extensively, and Rockwell presented his painting, which I just talked about. And I think through that friendship, Rockwell really had the support, in a way, to make more personal statements.
I feel like it's worth noting that that particular painting, The Golden Rule, is currently on display at the museum. Like, you can go and with your admission see this painting that we're talking about, and it really is like large and remarkable. You get an idea of how big these illustrations were to begin with, to be shrunk down to magazine size.
But then also that painting goes on to become a mosaic at the United Nations, of all places.
Yes.
From somebody who was perhaps restrained from getting involved politically and trying to paint literally an idealized version of a certain aspect of America, goes on to paint this painting that now is globally recognized as a statement of the Golden Rule. I want to talk to you more about Norman Rockwell, and I think we will.
We will at the end of the show,
we're going to talk more. Don't let us forget to talk about George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Norman Rockwell.
And how much of his collection
Absolutely.
they own. We'll check back in with Stephanie Plunkett a little later in the show to hear about what's currently happening at the museum and more about Rockwell himself.
We've got some bona fide Hollywood stars in the building who are working on the rebuilding of the Triplex Cinema not far from here in Great Barrington.
And coming right up, the music of Pittsfield's Billy Keane. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM, and our next guest is singer-songwriter and Pittsfield resident Billy Keane. Billy was discovered by the strangely unknown musician James Taylor, who he counts amongst his influences with Phil Ochs and Dylan and other legends who have written songs of freedom, love, and the plight of humanity with such fervor.
Billy's musical legacy has taken him to venues, communities, and festivals all over the U.S. He's even going to go to Brooklyn tonight. He's got the honor of sharing the stage with or supporting folks like Yo-Yo Ma, Molly Tuttle, the Gin Blossoms, Blues Traveler, and more.
Although Keane might be best known for co-founding the Americana group Whiskey Treaty Roadshow, that's just the latest in a slew of bands that he's been a part of over the years, including the Misdemeanor Outlaws and the Waking Dream, who are currently backing him.
His latest solo album, Oh These Days, was released earlier in the fall, and he'll be performing this Saturday, December 16th, at the Egremont Barn. Thank you, Billy Keane.
Well, thanks, guys. I just learned so much about myself.
How much of that was fabricated?
You know, the only thing that doesn't seem to hold true is I've since moved to Lenox. But
Okay.
We're
okay.
you know, same
you used
idea.
to live in Pittsfield.
Indeed, I did for many
You just
years.
moved down the road a bit.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I'm still in the fabulous 413.
That's true. And he's now living in James Taylor's basement, which is cool.
How creepy would that be? Because
Just let
he
us
certainly
know
didn't give me
if-
permission for that.
This is a safe space if you need help.
Oh, thank you. I can tell. Geez, I was totally enraptured by your conversation just then about Norman Rockwell. That was really incredible.
Do you have any other questions about Norman Rockwell?
I have tons, actually,
All right.
but
Well, you can-
I also have this burning desire to play music, so I'm not
okay.
sure.
Totally play music.
Then if you want to stay after, you can continue to ask questions.
I would
We'd
love
I
to.
get to Brooklyn.
Oh, that's true.
Let's
we
hear
gotta
a
hit the road.
song.
All right, let's do it. I'd love to play Fresh Flowers, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah, well, I worked for years down Louisiana gate. Well, I lost my money trying to buy cocaine. Well, I was wasting time down in New Orleans. Yeah, well, ain't nothing down there is the way it seems. Yeah, I'm trying to let it go. Can't make things right. Oh, well, a million memories keep me up at night. Yeah, you gotta take it slow. Try to live your life. Fresh flowers on a table, Lord, that do smell nice. I met a gypsy girl, she read them tarot cards. Yeah, well, she kissed me heavy and she read my stars. Well, she never told me what the stars did say. I never saw it coming when she ran away. Oh, I'm trying to let her go. Can't make things right. Yeah, well, a million memories keep me up at night. Oh, I gotta take it slow. Try to live my life. Yeah, fresh flowers on a table, Lord, that do smell nice. Yeah, well, I ain't seen heaven, but I've been through hell. Yeah, gotta keep on walking, it'll take you home. Yeah, you gotta let it go. Can't make things right. Oh, a million memories keep me up at night. Yeah, I gotta take it slow. Try to live your life. Yeah, fresh flowers on a table, Lord, do smell nice. Oh, so come on, baby, let's take a walk. Yeah, well, nothing crazy, just around the block. We've both been around a time or two. Yeah, well, let's start all over, honey, me and you. Yeah, we gotta take it slow. Can't make things right. Yeah, a million memories keep me up at night. Oh, we gotta take it slow. Try to live our life. Fresh flowers on a table, Lord. Yeah, fresh flowers on a table, Lord. Yeah, fresh flowers on a table, Lord, that do smell nice.
Billy Keane, live here at the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge on the fabulous 413. He's playing at the Egremont Barn in Egremont this Saturday.
I love how differently that sounds with just you on guitar than the version that's on your album. When you're going in for new work, are you building songs just like this and then fleshing it out? Or do you bring a bunch of people into the room and see if you can all craft the song together?
Oh, I love that question. So usually I write independently, and I typically do it just like this. And that song was one of those that happened in a morning with a coffee and, a joint. It was like, oh, hello. But then you get into the studio, and the way that I like to work is to involve the brains and the creative energies of other people who are going to be participating on the making of the record. So my producer, his name is James Wallace. He goes by Skyway Man, but he's got this incredible kind of like a musical visionary vibe to him. And when we were prepping for the record, he was like, I've got some interesting ideas for that track. And one of them involved, boosting the tempo by a bunch and kind of bringing this like cool cosmic country like bop behind it. So it was great. We just kind of whipped it out in the studio like that. But the question now becomes, how do we perform it? And it's literally, it's different every time.
Isn't it always?
It always is different every time. And in fact, we've got a pretty great arrangement happening tonight in Brooklyn that nobody's heard before. So
That's great. Will they hear it at the Egremont Barn on Saturday?
Indeed,
too?
they will.
Tell
Very
us about
cool.
the band that you're playing with tonight and on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm so honored to play with these fellas. Sometimes when people say, they ask about Billy Keane and the Waking Dream, I say, well, I'm their singer, because basically that's how I feel. It's David Tanklevsky on electric guitar. He's got some influences that range from like the Jerry Garcia kind of beautiful melodic noodling all the way out to like some pretty wild funk influence, and he brings all of that to how he creates on stage. Brian Cantor plays drums with me. He's kind of a legend in the industry. He's been around forever. Fruit Bats, a lot of their stuff. He played a bit with Vetiver, and now I'm really grateful that he hops in my Toyota Sienna tour van, and cruises around with me. And then Miles Lally, another kind of legendary dude. He was in LA for a long time and then came out to the Berkshires, and he's our bass player, and man, I'm their singer. It's a beautiful thing.
So cool.
That singer is Billy Keane, who is joining us live from the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge on the fabulous 413.
In similar fashion to my first song,
Yeah.
first question, like, are the songs that you write for Whiskey Treaty Roadshow fundamentally different from the ones you keep for yourself?
Yeah, kind of. I don't write to anything except the song, and I think the Whiskey Treaty there's such a great group of they're kind of like family when we get together because we only see each other for shows. It's like going home to dinner or something like that. That's a very specific sound, a very specific energy. And so when I'm writing, you know, I kind of, what I do with The Waking Dream is different. It's a bit more, you know, dynamic and introspective and coming from like a singer-songwriter perspective. So yeah, I have definitely written songs specifically for the Whiskey Treaty. We recorded a couple of those live last year, but yeah, when I'm writing something like Fresh Flowers, it's being able to perform it with The Waking Dream is such an incredible thing for me. Yeah.
We were teasing that you were discovered by James Taylor. You did tell us a funny story about that. Are you able to tell that story publicly, or you can say no comment?
I don't want people to think that there's something like super bad about this story, but I also don't think I should share it less, you know, I don't know. We'll talk about it off
you
air.
can say
We'll
no.
I
decide.
wanted to
That's
give you that
fine.
out. I wanted to give you that out.
My attorneys are waiting in the hallway.
Okay,
Let
good.
me confer with them.
If you meet
That's
police
fair.
or I on the street, we will tell you the story in person. But do
Yes,
tell,
as you should.
tell us about your relationship with James Taylor musically then.
Oh, well, you know, I mean, it's a thing that it's interesting just because it was such a great experience at the time, but we don't really have a relationship now except for those wonderful memories. I had moved here from Louisiana. This sounds like it's non sequitur, but it relates. I was a commercial diver in Louisiana for a couple of years, kind of a weird thing. And then the fellow who was going to record a record for me, he just wanted me to do like a solo thing. He was working for the Taylors up here. So the first time I ever knew of the Berkshires, stepped foot in the Berkshires, was when I was putting a deposit down in an apartment, and we were going to record this record. So it was very strange. And then I met, you know, the Taylors and their crew through my producer at the time, and they're just super supportive, amazing people, you know. And so for that first year, I hadn't really expected on sticking around. I didn't know how the songwriting thing was going to go. I still had a job as a commercial diver. I was just, you know, taking some time. But they were very supportive and introduced me to some really wonderful people, and that's kind of how that went, you know?
Does the weather make you regret this decision?
Oh, yeah. I can't. I grew up in Connecticut, so it's not like I don't know about the cold, but the 2 years I spent in Louisiana ruined me.
Yeah.
I can't, you know.
I was there for a weekend and it practically ruined me.
Exactly. I wear a parka starting in like September, and I wander around in my parka with the hood up because I'm freezing cold all the time. It does get beautiful, especially this. People should visit the museum for so many reasons, but one of them is that it's the grounds are just gorgeous. When there's a nice, fresh fallen snow on there, it's pretty amazing. We all turn into Norman Rockwell. We're like painting.
You can imagine that there's a fresh fallen snow out there today.
It's true. Yeah, exactly.
We are at the Norman Rockwell Museum, broadcasting live here on the Fabulous 413. Shall we hear one more from Billy Keane, who plays at Egremont Barn this Saturday?
Let's.
All right. I'd love to do one for you. I think I would love to play a song called Halo. It's off that new record again.
Well, sunrise shining through my window, fill my heart with gladness for another day. Bring peace to my guilty thinking, count my many blessings, it's the only way. I can't help but starting to wondering how I got so lucky, how I made it this far. Some of us ain't been easy on living, made some poor decisions, we know who we are. Well, meaning learning as I go, the longer I live, I swear the less I know. A miracle I didn't wind up in, no, there ain't no halo hanging over my head. Yeah, well, all this talk of heaven, all this talk of redemption always leads back to judgment, tell you everything is wrong. Gotta say, coming up from the bottom, everything feels like heaven, yeah, we've been there all along. I don't need nobody to tell me what it takes to be holy, what it means to be saved. I can feel the spirit moving within me, it's the truth that I'm feeling, take it with me to my grave. Well, meaning learning as I go, the longer I live, I swear the less I know. A miracle I didn't wind up in, no, there ain't no halo hanging over my head. No, there ain't no halo hanging over my head. I've lost time, oh, in many dark spaces. I've forgotten the faces, the people I love. Ain't too late, my past are running out before me. I can feel the power fill me up from above. Take your judgment, take your expectations, take your bad religion far away from here. I ain't forbid, but I'm trying to get better. Takes a good intention, make the river run clear. Well-meaning line as I go, the longer it lives, I swear the less I know. A miracle I didn't wind up dead, and all the rain, no halo hanging over my head. Well-meaning line as I go, where the longer it lives, I swear the less I know. Miracle I didn't wind up dead, and all the rain, no halo hanging over my head.
Billy Keane is one of the founders of Whiskey Treaty Roadshow, and his latest solo album, Oh These Days, is out now, and he and his band, The Waking Dream, will be performing at the Egremont Barn on December 16th. Find tickets and information on his website or at theegremontbarn.com. So good. Thank you so much for joining
All right,
us.
thank you. It was so much fun.
Yeah, we love having you here, Billy.
Well, let's do it again. Let's all meet up at the museum again.
Yeah, I love that.
Jeez.
Thanks, dude.
Coming up, speaking of the museum, we're broadcasting live from the Norman Rockwell Museum, and later in the show you can hear some of the things you can currently see in the winter wonderland that is the Norman Rockwell Museum. We'll have more with Chief Curator Stephanie Plunkett, but first we'll talk about a star-studded, movie-based live reading to support a cinema just down the street.
And you're listening to the Fabulous 413 live from the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge.
Not far from this museum, in Great Barrington, a theater revival is underway. The Triplex Cinema in Great Barrington is hosting Bring Back the Movies.
It's a fundraiser for the newly revived Triplex Cinema. The Triplex's Bring Back the Movies events offer live readings of scenes from iconic movies or the plays on which they're based. The holiday edition will include scenes from both old favorites, such as It's a Wonderful Life, Rockwell connection there.
Yes, definitely.
And A Christmas Carol, as well as newer classics such as Home Alone, Love Actually, and Elf. Actually, Rockwell connection for A Christmas Carol, too.
I'm sure, yeah. He was a big fan.
He was.
Joining us from this Saturday's event that's happening at Simon's Rock are actors and Berkshire residents Jane Atkinson, Michael Gill, who happen to be married, but this was news to me, and I think many fans of the show House of Cards, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, and director Michelle Joyner. Thank you all for joining us here at the Rockwell Museum.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Happy to
Wonderful
be here.
to be here.
Not to make a sort of irreverent connection, but the base of this reminds me a lot of Rocky Horror. Like when you see it done by like a group of players that know it, like it's a similar thing to where you've got the movie and then you're reading. They know all the lines, so they're acting it out in front in costume. Now, no, I don't think anyone's expecting you to be in costume while you're doing this, but maybe that's a suggestion for later.
I love that idea. We have a few little prop things. You know, fingerless gloves for Scrooge, for example,
Gotta
just to
have
give it the nightcap, kind of thing.
A
But
highball.
Is that what you'll be having?
Oh, yes.
Very well done. Very well done.
But we don't. But I don't encourage the actors to mimic the original movies. I encourage them to watch them and be familiar with what was done, but make it their own and do an interpretation that suits our group and our actors. And it's not every scene is perfect casting for those roles, but that doesn't matter.
It makes it more fun, I would imagine.
Yes, it's
Right.
great.
When I was
great fun.
in 7th grade, I was tall for my age, and I played Tiny Tim. It worked out great.
It's better when it's ironic.
Yeah, I think so too. Michelle Joyner, who's the director of this event that's happening, Bring Back the Movies, to a benefit for the Triplex, which is showing movies again. It had closed, there was renovations, there are movies that are going on there right now. I was just looking at them, so many of them that I want to see.
Actually, Maestro opens tonight there.
Oh yeah, Maestro.
Yeah.
That was the one I was like, I gotta go see that one.
Yeah.
But tell us about where this idea came from and how you can, the Berkshires is rich with talent, but how you can get so much talent together to support something like this.
We did a show, we did the same show with pretty much the same cast, including these guys, in, what was it, August? It was in August sometime, right? And of just iconic movie scenes. And because it was any movie, it was really, I mean, there's just, how do you choose?
Yeah.
You know, and people were like sending me lists, you have to include this, you have to include this. And
So you got to do the choosing. It wasn't the actors, or was it?
Yeah, no, it was pretty much me,
Oh,
Nikki
nice.
Wilson, the producer, and anyway, but this is holiday movie specific.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, you know, there's not as many, obviously, holiday movies, but there's a lot. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
but it was fun to research them. And, but the idea was everyone loves their favorite movies and their favorite movie scenes, and to have actors, especially actors that are known and local and come out and
talented.
Oh, yeah.
talented,
Goes without saying,
Yes,
Jane Atkinson.
talented.
but also to play but to play roles that, you know, that is a role that they, you know, never got to play and probably never would get to play.
Norma Desmond.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, Jane crushed it as in Sunset Boulevard last time.
It was the scarf and looking out into the distance.
And also we use a lot of movie music too.
That's so great.
Yes, and so we have sing-alongs, and the audience, you know, sings along, and it's just very heartwarming and heart-opening. And you know, when I wrote the show, when I created the show this time, I wore a Santa hat.
Oh, yeah. I almost wore a Santa hat today. Dang it. That is the director of Bring Back the Movies, which is going to have a benefit for the Triplex Cinema in Great Barrington this Saturday at Simon's Rock. And we're also joined by Jane Atkinson and Michael Gill, who are the actors, some of the actors that will be part of it.
What did you enjoy about doing this in August that brought you back for the December show? What did you love most about doing this?
The feeling in the audience, responding to lines that we all know and are familiar with from our favorite movies, and the sing-along.
Yeah. What did you sing along to in that one?
Oh, do you remember?
Of course, our minds are all blank.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it was all songs that we knew, right? And so you see an entire audience of adults singing with you, and it just, we all sort of became young again. And we sort of had this shared experience of these movies that we loved so much.
And it's this middle world between sharing and not performance oriented, where you can actually communicate with the audience.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we're prepared up to a certain point. We're not off book. It's sort of a cold, warmish reading. We can communicate with our audience.
Yeah.
It's this wonderful world of storytelling that we don't get to do when we're either in front of a camera or when we're doing a full production of a play. That fourth wall is there. And so this gives us an opportunity to really share with the community. And even when we make mistakes, wink and nod with them, along with them, and have a really great time.
Michael and I did Moonstruck.
Oh, wow.
Right? See?
Snap
You
out.
And so there we are, we're doing Moonstruck, you know, and that famous line, snap out of it, right? So you know that's coming up, and I said, well, how do we do this? And we sort of mimed, and he flipped his head that way, and I went like this, and he flipped his head that way.
Literally people
Schmacting.
cheered.
Schmacting is the
That's
best.
what it's called. Smacked.
You know, the schmacting thing.
I do remember, just thinking about how can I not remember any of these songs? We did a tribute to Harold and Maude. We did a lot of the Cat Stevens
Cat
songs
Stevens.
in the
Oh,
first
yeah.
one.
So
Yeah,
great.
Did that.
yeah, right.
It was beautiful.
There was
It was
some really nice
beautiful.
music. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies, hands down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yeah, you've seen it
I've seen it
100 times.
at least 30 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every year
Every
he
year.
watches that.
Yeah.
Through high school, we kind of had a weekly showing of it in my dorm. I went to boarding school. But, yeah, that was one that was always checked out somewhere from the library because we had a cache of, but like that was one of the favorites.
Wow.
It was always showing somewhere every weekend on campus. Period.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Sweet.
Great.
Never gets old.
Yeah.
Never gets old.
So it was the feeling that happened, and it was so positive, and it just enlivened, and there was this community connection. And, you know, these times that we're in are challenging. They're challenging in so many ways. And so when we were done, we went over to Michelle and Robert, her husband Robert, and we had dinner, and we started talking. And I said, why don't we do this again? and they sort of, you know, big eyes at me. I said, how about, why don't we bring back to the movies the holidays? And he said, we're doing it. And I said, and we're doing it.
It's a very
Volunteered yet again.
Volunteer.
but it's a very natural fit to do a holiday movie
really
show.
is.
Yes.
Because
Really
again,
is.
they're so iconic, and there's so many Christmas carols. We have Hanukkah songs. We're doing a scene from Diary of Anne Frank. We're doing, it's some of it is very heartwarming and touching, and others is just silly and fun. Like, we're doing the Adam Sandler Hanukkah song from Saturday Night Live.
Nice.
The updated version or the
are
original
doing-
version?
Oh, Michael, you're doing that
All right, Michael's
That's like when I
doing
say
it.
we need to take out the garbage.
It's like, we need to take out.
It's a royal we. Honey, we need to fix the car.
Speaking of that community connection, any of you, if you'd like to speak on just the connection, especially between like community theater, community cinemas like this, like smaller cinemas that are really important to the vitality of communities like Great Barrington, like other ones that have like small, like art house and smaller cinemas, and why it's important to revive them if they are struggling and support them if they are struggling.
And worth noting to the listener, you're all film and television actors, and have
The idea that Great Barrington would not have the triplex, the hole that would create was, we weren't even in town. We found that out when we got back. And Nikki and citizens swarmed together to keep the triplex there is an enormous feat of dedication and what they did. Because I just could not. The International Berkshire Theater Festival is there. I mean, a film festival is there. And the idea that this place would not exist anymore was heart-wrenching, because it is a place where people gather. And bringing people back to the movies, post-pandemic, if we can say that, is hard, because people are nervous still about going to the theater, and there aren't as many movies that have been produced.
And they're comfortable on their couches.
And
now.
we've got,
Well,
it
that's
can
the whole
click,
bigger
right?
question.
Yeah.
Right.
So the idea that
Are movies being made anymore?
the idea that we saved that place, and the contribution that we made, is enormous, and I think there should be a film made about it.
Well, maybe talking to the right people.
Well, because of what you just said, because these small art houses and small businesses and people who just didn't make it through the pandemic because they couldn't make ends meet, this kind of, I always call it the Grinch who stole Christmas, when everyone stands around and what really is what's left. And it's holding hands and caring about each other and making the community happen.
Having a group sing along.
And a group thing.
And making the triplex grow three sizes
But
that day. Like
I
Grinch's heart.
would also like to add to what Jane just said, and that is, it's very difficult now for small cinemas to stay solvent. I mean, you just don't really make money having a small commercial theater these days, and many of the model is now becoming either they close or they become nonprofit. It happened in Amherst, it happened in Chatham, it happened in, I think, Millerton. So we're following a model. It's not like we're reinventing something that's never been done, but it seems like the only way forward at this point.
And it is a 501c3 nonprofit, and I think that is something good. It is a good way forward. It may be the only way forward, because we've talked about this many times on the show. We seem to decide as a country that we don't want to invest in the arts in the way that other nations do.
Yes,
Or
and
that
this
we have
new
previously.
construct of wanting to sit at home in the coziness, pausing, going to get a drink, going to the bath. You have this ability and facility to not, there's no impetus anymore to have this community experience. And we've lost that, and it's sort of turned over to the big sound effect movies that you have to see on a much bigger screen that people are drawn to. But when it comes just to storytelling, people can watch that on a phone and be just as scrutinizing of the sound and the visuals as they would be on a big screen. So they're just deciding not to go and spend that kind of money.
But it is very different to see movies at all. I wouldn't say those type of movies. To see movies at all on a much larger screen than you can really afford to have in your house in general. In the same way that like other arts it's really important to make sure that you are going out and engaging with the arts.
It's magic.
Like in public, like,
magical.
and really like regardless of medium, because like that connection between you and the art that is happening, let alone your greater community, is really important to like it's why we keep going as humans. Really.
Right, and
We're in
also-
a very, very difficult time of challenge with that because people are being drawn to being alone.
But also just the experience of being at a movie with many other people. Emotions are contagious. If you feel people getting emotional, something's really sad, before you know it, everyone in your row is weeping, or laughing, or scared to death, and it's different.
Or you're Nicole Kidman alone in a movie theater, just talking about how amazing movies are.
Right.
But you won't be alone in this setting, and you'll be able to interact in a way that seems really fun, kind of a la Mystery Science Theater, with actual actors recreating these beloved scenes from these beloved holiday movies.
And
cool.
songs.
And songs. It's the Triplex's Bring Back the Movies event. It's happening this Saturday at Simon's Rock. We're joined by the director, Michelle Joyner, as well as the couple, Jane Atkinson and Michael Gill, who will be doing a romantic scene from a holiday movie. Two. One of them I know about is from Shop Around the Corner. What's the other one?
It's
Christmas in Connecticut?
Christmas.
Oh,
in
I was thinking
Connecticut.
that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's interesting to me is, you've been in films and all sorts of television shows, but to me, I feel like I'm speaking with the President of the United States, Garrett Walker,
So watch out.
from House of Cards, as well as Secretary of State.
Oh, now really watch out.
Catherine Durant. Your fate on that show, without revealing anything, does not end up well for either of you. One of you in
Well, I
particularly
almost
poorly.
took Frank down, if you remember.
I do remember that, and it was so great. But
I will remind people that the title of the show is House of Cards.
Yeah. But before we let you go, they didn't know that you were a couple either when you were on the set. Is
They
that true?
didn't.
Yeah.
In fact, it was wonderful. The first table read, we were all sitting around, and Jane and I were sitting next to each other. And we were, doing what we do, holding hands, hugging, whatever. And people were looking at us. And at one point, I don't remember, Reggie looked at us and said, "What's going on? This is really rapid."
Fall in love at the first table read.
But to that, even then, I went into the Oval for the first rehearsal, and I had sent pictures for them to put on the back desk by the window, just for historical references and stuff. And I went to look at how they dressed the set, and there were a bunch of pictures with me and Jane. And I went to the prop designer, and I said, "That's my wife, but she's also going to be the Secretary of State."
In the show.
In the show. He was like, "What?"
And the same thing happened with me with a picture of him. And they gave me red hair or something like that. But Robin had no idea we were married. We had been we'd
That'd
been
been a
shooting.
while.
And it'd been for a while, and I said, "There's my husband."
And do you work together often? Is that something that throughout
Not
your
on
careers?
television.
Yeah.
Theater we've done, but
Yeah.
not on television. So
Well,
it
they're
was
going to
really-
work together this weekend.
Yes, we
Yes.
are.
Yes.
To help continue to save the Triplex. And we've been speaking with Jane Atkinson and Michael Gill, the husband and wife acting team, who will be part of it, as well as the director, Michelle Joyner. It sounds like a great event this Saturday at
And we have
Simon's Rock.
2 shows.
2 shows, 3 and 6 o'clock.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And before we wrap up today's show, we want to hear a little bit more about the Norman Rockwell Museum and what else is in store. So up next, we'll check back in with Stephanie Plunkett, the chief curator and deputy director, to hear about some of the non-Rockwell related exhibits here.
It is the Fabulous 413 live from the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge.
And we are once again joined by Stephanie Plunkett, the chief curator and deputy director of the museum. In just the couple minutes that we have left, tell us a little bit about Between Worlds, the art and design of Leo Leone.
Yeah, thank you. This is an exhibition that went up recently, focusing on the art of revolutionary mid-century designer and illustrator Leo Leone. So there's a really wonderful array of work that he did in classic modernist design, but I think especially a great gallery of his children's book art, which became so famous. Books like Frederick and Pezzettino, and books that really tell great contemporary fables about just how to live in the world in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely like an Aesop's fable kind of vibe with so many of the books. And then you can also see the inspiration behind of what maybe Eric Carle and his style of drawings and illustrations would go on to do
and
as
just
well.
the giant breadth of mediums that he worked within is really kind of astounding.
Yeah, it was really great to
Absolutely.
go through that. Now, I did tease before that we need to, before we wrap up, know about the George Lucas / Steven Spielberg connection with the Norman Rockwell Museum
And their rivalry,
and their rivalry.
their collections.
Well, both Spielberg and Lucas are big Rockwell collectors, and obviously That has to do with Rockwell's prominence as a visual storyteller, but it has been commented by both of them that Rockwell's ability to tell a story in one frame, a complete story in one frame in a way, has been very inspirational to both movie directors. And Rockwell actually once said that if he hadn't been an illustrator, he would have wanted to be a movie director. So natural connection there.
And again, shameless plug. Become a member of NEPM. Get the Passport app. Watch The American Masters. Spielberg talks a lot about his love for Norman Rockwell. We love Norman Rockwell, and we've loved having this time here at the Norman Rockwell Museum broadcasting live. Stephanie Plunkett, who's the deputy director and the chief curator here. Thank you so much for welcoming us. Thanks to all of our guests who've been here.
What a great show.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Come make a visit, see their awesome train set.
Yeah, we can't wait to come back. Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, it's a holiday edition of Live Music Friday.
We welcome Kimaya Diggs, who will play an intimate holiday show with friends at the Drake in Amherst this Saturday.
We'll taste some holiday bubbles in our Wine Thunderdome at Table and Vine in West Springfield.
And we'll hear about a queer, trans, black, indigenous, people of color makers market coming to Holyoke that invites all people of all abilities.
We want to say a special thank you to Tony Dunn, our director, for making all this happen. We didn't get Billy Keane to promise to bring James Taylor on the show in 2024, but that is part of the goals. And also a huge thanks to Bart Rankin, our engineer here, who's been pushing all the buttons behind the scenes.
And Margaret Hotchkiss and Audrey Hackett, who also helped make all of this happen. Happy 200th show, Monty.
Yeah, happy 200th show to you, too. Maybe we got to go have some of that bubbly now.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine with that. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.